Hi everyone, and we're back with more Swordicon Valeria. So I want to continue my review and build series with a character named SchackLulu. I'm just going to refer to her as Lulu moving forward. I figure since Lulu's banner followed Karis's banner on the CN server, it's not a bad idea to put out a build video for Lulu. Lulu is a great character that has piercing damage and debuffs. So in this video, I'm going to review her skill kit as well as her skill build and her potential skill and equipment setups. First, we have her trait skill, Under the Skirt, also called Stinger Dress. This increases her attack by 10%. At base level, you don't have any attack increase. You start getting a 5% attack increase at 2 stars, and it increases to the maximum of 10% at 4 stars. Her trait skill also gives her Jump, which is a buff that triples a character's jump power and allows them to traverse over gaps. She also has a unique mechanic built into her trait skill called Stinger. This is a mark that allows her to accumulate stacks, and when she reaches 3 stacks, she deals piercing damage once and inflicts 1 stack of infection to the target, then clears all of the stinger marks. So Lulu accumulates stacks every time she deals damage. And you'll see how this works with her kit because she has a lot of techniques that deal multiple hits. The piercing damage portion of her mechanic allows her to ignore the target's physical defense and magic defense. At base level, the piercing damage is equal to 20% of Lulu's physical attack, and it increases to a maximum of 40% of her physical attack at 3 stars. So in addition to the piercing damage, when you reach 3 stacks of Stinger, you'll also inflict 1 stack of infection. And this is a debuff where the character will lose a certain amount of HP after each turn. More stacks will deal higher damage, and it can stack up to 9 times. The stacks are halved after taking effect. Her trait skill also increases her maximum range by 1 tile for her range skills at 3 stars. The last part of her trait skill is unlocked at 5 stars. So for the last part of her trait skill, when she gets enough stacks to trigger Stinger, she recovers 1 energy and reduces the cooldown of Charm and Stunning Beauty by 1 turn. And this can happen up to 1 time per round. So this last part of her trait skill will allow her to turn cycle better with her skills, which means that she'll be applying more stacks and activating Stinger much more frequently. Basically, her damage output would increase. And you'll see in a moment, her skills synergize very well with her trait skill. Lulu also starts with a skill called Continuous Stab, also referred to as Flurry of Stabs. This deals 45% physical damage 3 times. When attacking, crit increases by 20%. This skill is pretty good. Since it attacks 3 times, it allows you to gain stacks. And you also get a crit rate increase, but it's not a long-range attack, so it doesn't benefit from the range increase that she gets from her trait skill. That only applies to skills that hit 2 tiles or more away. So while this is a pretty good starting skill, she has better options on her skill tree that are ranged attacks. So for level 1, she has 2 passive skills. First we have Lock, and at the start of a turn, she inflicts physical defense down 2, which decreases the physical defense of the enemy by 40%. On the enemy with the highest physical attack within 6 tiles around Lulu, and the debuff lasts for 1 turn. This is a decent passive, but the debuff only applies to 1 enemy, and it only lasts for 1 turn. Her other option at rank 1 is called Hunting Nature, also called Predatory Instinct. Again, this is another passive, and when Lulu is in an unharmed state. In other words, her HP is at 100%, her movement is increased by 1 tile. Additionally, when the movement plus charge distance is greater than 3 tiles, her attack is increased by 15% before attacking, lasting until the end of the turn, and it's stackable. This is a fantastic passive for her because it increases her attack in a more consistent manner. Since Lulu inherently has really great mobility, it's really easy to achieve the movement requirement to get the attack bonus. This is overall just a better passive than the other option. So take Hunting Nature, Predatory Instinct at rank 1. So for rank 3 we have 2 skills. First we have Charm. This is an instant attack that upon hitting, it increases the DOT damage, so the continuous damage, the target receives by 30%. And the effect lasts for 2 turns. So this increases the DOT damage from debuffs like Scorch, Infection, Life Loss, Stigmata, and Corrosion. Additionally, she inflicts Charm, which is a control debuff that makes the enemies move towards the caster. Charm is inflicted on healthy enemies, so enemies that have 70% or more HP, and the debuff lasts for 1 turn. So this skill is unique, especially because of the Charm debuff, which is also referred to as Bewitched, and the increased DOT damage will just improve the damage output of your team in general, but it also improves Lulu's infection stacks damage. This is a skill you may want to use a Casalia on, because her other skill at rank 3 is one that you definitely want to pick up. So her other skill at rank 3 is called Stunning Beauty, also called Grace of Swan. This is a physical instant attack, where you select one spot within a cross-shaped range around Lulu. She charges to the location and attacks random enemies within 2 tiles 2 times, each time dealing 10% AoE damage. If her trait skill is triggered in this turn, then after attacking, Stunning Beauty can be cast again without cost. I know the skill looks like it has low damage, but it's great for accumulating stacks for her trait skill. It also works really well with her passive at rank 1, and it combos perfectly with a skill that she has at rank 7. So it's recommended to take Stunning Beauty at rank 3. Picking up Charm is completely optional, and you probably won't use it in a skill slot over other skills. At rank 5, we have 2 reaction skills. The first option is called Curse. With this reaction skill, when hit by an active attack, the damage taken is decreased by 8%. In addition, upon receiving an active attack, the attacker will be inflicted with Vulnerable 2 for 2 turns. Vulnerable 2 is a debuff that increases damage taken by 20%. Her other reaction skill is called Close Yet Distant, also referred to as Agile Swap. With this reaction skill, before being hit by an enemy's melee active attack, if the enemy is in a healthy state, so in other words, their HP is no less than 70%, Lulu will gain 2 dodge attempts for 1 turn, and she'll swap positions with the enemy target. This reaction skill is great because it allows you to get dodge, which is just one of the most valuable buffs in the game. Essentially, when you dodge an attack, you don't take any damage at all. Now, it is limited to 2 dodges when you use this skill, and the skill has a 3-turn cooldown. You'll also have to pay attention to where she's going to swap positions to, which actually can be helpful in terms of traversing the map. In other words, you can use the swapping strategically to your advantage, and the dodge attempts allow her to not take damage. This skill has a lot of utility, so it is recommended to take this swapping skill over the other reaction skill. At rank 7, we have a passive and a damage skill. First, we have Linger, also called Mediator. With this passive, after hitting a target with Charm or Stunning Beauty, Lulu will recover 1 energy, and this can only be triggered 1 time per round, when either Charm or Stunning Beauty hit healthy enemies, so enemies that have no less than 70% HP. She'll inflict Attack Down 2 and Mediator on them for 2 turns. Attack Down 2 is a debuff that decreases physical and magic attack by 20%. The Mediator debuff, also referred to as Linger, disables passive skills and reduces movement by 1 tile. This is a pretty good passive, especially if you want to use Lulu as a debuffer, because you're getting the energy recovery and powerful debuffs that are good for disruption and control. However, her other skill at rank 7 just happens to be her ultimate skill. This skill is called End of the Song, also referred to as Final Curtain. This skill deals physical damage. It attacks random enemies within 3 tiles of the character, dealing damage 8 times, each time dealing 20% AoE damage. The skill can also repeatedly trigger her trait effects. In other words, she's going to gain stacks of the Stinger mark with each of the hits. So every time she reaches 3 stacks, it's going to proc the piercing damage and infection. Given the number of hits this attack does, you could proc her trait skill 2 or 3 times, especially if you couple it with the Stunning Beauty Grace of Swan skill. So this is a fantastic skill. It's definitely recommended to pick up this skill at rank 7. At rank 9, you have 2 basic attacks. The first option is Hypnotic Strike. This deals 50% physical damage 2 times, with a 30% chance to inflict sleep on the target for 1 turn. Sleep is a debuff where the enemy won't be able to take an action, and the effect is removed when they take damage. This skill is pretty good, but it is a short-range melee skill, so it won't benefit from the range increase from her trait skill, since it only applies to ranged attacks. Her other option is a basic attack called Graceful Sting, also called Flying Thorn. This is a physical attack that deals 33% damage 3 times. This basic attack is a ranged skill, so it will get the range increase from the trait skill. In addition, since this attack hits 3 times, you're guaranteed to get enough stacks to proc the trait skill. So when you use this basic attack, you'll get the piercing damage and infection stacks. This is a fantastic basic attack, and it synergizes really well with her trait skill, so you definitely want to pick up this skill at rank 9. At rank 11, we have a damage skill and a support skill. First, we have Evasion Step, also called Fancy Footwork. This is a support skill that reduces the AoE damage by 50%, and Lulu gains 2 dodge attempts for 2 turns. This is a great skill for damage reduction and mitigation. So you won't be able to hit her with single target attacks because of dodge, she'll just dodge the attack. And if you use AoE, she'll take 50% less damage. This is a great defensive technique, but it doesn't do much else. Her other option at rank 11 is Poison Blade Throw. This is a single target attack that deals 35% physical damage 2 times and inflicts 2 stacks of infection each time. This is one of her core infection skills, so if you want to play her as a debuffer and be able to pile on infection stacks, you'll definitely want to pick up this skill. And it is recommended to pick up this skill so you have it as an option. So for her skill setup, her basic attack is going to be Flying Thorn, Graceful Sting. For her reaction skill, you're going to have Close Yet Distant, Agile Swap. And for her skill slots, there's a few different options. I think the best setup, if you want to make use of her trait skill, is to use her passive Predatory Instinct, and then use 2 skills, Stunning Beauty, Grace of Swan, and her ultimate skill. Those 3 skills combo really well together in terms of making use of her trait skill and applying stacks and gaining stacks. It also lets her get increased mobility and attack strength from the passive. This setup is a great way to make use of her unique mechanic while increasing her damage output. If you want to use her as a debuffer, another option is to put Poison Blade Throw in one of the slots. This would allow you to apply more stacks of infection. This might be an instance where you put the Charm Bewitch skill in to increase the DOT damage. With respect to her equipment, her best option for a weapon is Void Stab. This will increase her crit rate and crit damage, so this weapon is just going to improve her overall damage output. If you have it, the Cornucopia Dagger isn't a bad option either, because it gives you energy recovery and a chance to recover HP as well. For her trinket, you really want anything that increases her attack, so anything that will increase her damage output. Her best option is probably Maverick's Cloak. This gives an increase to attack, defense, and crit rate when there are no allies within 4 tiles around the character. Since Lulu has really good mobility, and she has those swapping skills, it's not difficult at all to meet that criteria to get those increases. Another option is to use Flying Blade Arm Guard. This helps with getting stacks for her trait skill, and you get used to the piercing damage as well. As for her Terror Whisper, you can use something like Verdict of Justice to get the increase to crit rate by 15%. Another option is to use Course of Fortune. This gives a random buff at the start of the turn. At max level, it gives 2 random buffs. There are some really good buffs that could be applied. There's one that gives 8% attack and defense, along with Energy Restore. There's also a buff for damage reduction, and one for healing your allies and yourself. There's also buffs for dealing damage to the enemies, including one that does 10% piercing damage to enemies within 3 spaces, and in some cases this could do absolutely nothing. This Terror Whisper can apply some nice buffs, but it is entirely luck-based. Lulu is definitely an interesting character, with excellent mobility and a unique skill mechanic that allows her to excel at dealing piercing damage while piling on infection stacks. She also has a number of other debuffs, including a unique debuff like Charm. She has great self-buffs that increase her movement, attack range, and damage output, and she even has a dodge buff that helps her with damage mitigation. Lulu has a nice dual role as a DPS and debuffer. However, she really needs to be 3 stars or more to unlock her potential. So keep that in mind if you're deciding whether to summon for her or build her. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you soon. Bye.